Hey pals and gals out there in YouTube land, this is Pat from Rain Country. And last night I was up trying to get caught up on my
I come across
a comment from one of our frequent viewers on our channel. And she outdone me in what I was thinking was an original plan. And we all know what this is. It's a toilet paper, the center of a toilet paper roll. And I had an idea a while back of making some fire starters out of those. And Mrs. Rain put together a fire starter video. I think it's linked right up here. Or is it right up here? She's got one where you use egg cartons, the paper egg cartons, to make fire starter out of wax and dryer lint or sawdust. Well, we get quite a bit of sawdust around here with little projects that I got going on, and so I think sawdust burns a little bit better and cleaner than the dryer lint, because dryer lint has a lot of well, basically plastic. So anyway, because we do have a large resource of sawdust, I was going to make, and we have, you know, any of these, is better to go ahead and use them if you got them. And I was thinking, well, I'll make some little fire starter pucks out of these. So what the plan is, and this goes on the heels of is the thing that got me motivated to get going on this, was one of our loyal viewers made that comment that she actually fills these full of dryer lint and folds over the bottom and captures the wax and lint inside here. But what I want to do is I want to build a little jig. I'll show you here. What I got here is a little piece of Doug fir, and I'll find center in here. I got this Forstner bit on here. Well, Forstner bit on here, and what I'll do is I think this is 1 3/4 inches, yeah. And what I'll do is I will drill holes in this and have it go clear through, to where the hole goes clear through the board. And I'll drill several of these down the board to where I can line these up in those holes. Well, this should fit in the hole fairly comfortably with a little bit of wiggle room to spare. Well, it'll act kind of like a coin roll, or quarter roll, or whatever, you know. And so what I'll do is I'll melt down the wax. I'll add the wax and the sawdust mixture, and then pour it into this and let it cool. And then I'll cut it down into smaller little pucks, you know, kind of like the size of tea lights or something, and see how they work as far as fire starters for, you know, getting small things going. You know, they might be handy for putting in a backpack or something like that if you're out camping and such. You're in the shop with me, engineering on the fly. So this is the maiden voyage of this little project, so I thought I would just bring you along, and hopefully we'll all learn something out of this. It may or may not work. So the first thing I want to do is I want to find center. And some of this stuff I've already done, just so you know, don't want to bore you guys completely to death if you're not already, but I went ahead and found center on this little board here. And so I'm just going to scribe a line on that board, and then I'm going to have another piece alongside of it after I find where the center of the Forstner bit touches that line. I can pin that down. I can place this is going to act as a fence. So I'm going to get a couple of quick clamps and go ahead and, you know, go ahead and temporarily put this makeshift fence on here, so I have something for this board to drift along, so I can find center every single time when I go to put the holes in the board. Okay, so now anywhere I slide on that fence, it's going to be right exactly in the center of this board here. And so I'm going to go ahead and get this first hole basically kind of sort of lined up. You know, like I said, I'm not, this isn't rocket science, so I'm not going to get too particular, but I got like a 1/2 inch that way. So I think what I'll do is I'm gonna go in maybe about 1 inch. And the reason for that is that I'm going to, when I get done here, I'm going to cut this in 2. And then I'll be able to sandwich it together with this, this carriage bolt, and it'll be able to separate. So when I go to pour the wax in here, it won't just be a big solid piece of wax underneath here and be kind of welded to the bottom of this. But I'll be able to separate this thing in 2. And actually, the better way to do it might be to cut this first, and then sandwich this together. That way, the hole won't be oblong. I had Mama Rain get me some. Just this is from her last little project for her other fire starters, and so I asked her to get me another candle that we picked these things up at garage sales. I'll go ahead and get this thing melting. What I'll do is I'll get the bolt holes. I'll get these bolt holes drilled in here first. I'll set this up on the drill press and drill these holes in here, and drill this hole in here, and that way all the holes will line up perfectly before I rip this down the center. What I'll do is I'll just mark these out where I want these to be. So I think what I'll do is I'll come in 1 inch. That's where my that's where these carriage bolts are going to go. And I'll come in, eyeball this at about a 1/2 inch, maybe 1 inch past that. So at 2 inches, I'll come in with the edge of my Forstner bit hole. I'm just going to mark it. I'm not going to drill it through. And then a 1/2 inch past that one, I'll make another one. Cut to length. I will stand this up vertically and then cut some holes in here for some bolts to where I can sandwich this together. So at 1 inch, I want to come in here and make a mark. On the other side, I want to come in at 1 inch and make a mark. And find center. This is a 1 inch board, so I want to go to 1/2 inch. This is just what I do. Probably not what all you safety guys out there want done, but these tips get loaded up with, you know, your castings or drillings or whatever you want to call them. And so, in order to clear that out, instead of shutting the machine off and turning the machine on, shutting it off and turning it on, so I just drag a little piece of wood and just knock that stuff out of there. It's no big deal. And then continue my cut. till it's a little hard to push. It loads up again. I just drag that little piece of wood on there and it cleans it up. I don't really think about talking about this kind of stuff because, well, I'm thinking that some folks should know better. If you're not comfortable running tools, you shouldn't be doing it unless you're being schooled under somebody or read the manual and have a little bit of common sense. But sometimes you'll see me not using push sticks and not using push blocks and some things like that. Sometimes I do. This particular case, I'm within, if I go below 1 3/4 or 2 inches, I'll use a push block. And depending on what I'm cutting on here, I may or may not use a push block in that particular respect. I don't use a fence, or I mean I don't use a guard on there because there are times when I've used a guard and it's gotten me in trouble. I think you don't have as good control over the piece of work when you use a guard, but that's just me. If you've got a guard, I would encourage you to use it. I would really encourage you to use your ear wear and your eyewear. All those things are really important. So with that being said, I'll put some earplugs in. I like to wear these guys because your field of vision is a little bit more open and it covers more, especially when you're working on a wood lathe. You never know when that chunk's going to come out and fly at you. You can wear aprons that have thick chests on them, stuff like that. I have seen stuff come out of the wood lathe. That's happened to me. I've had stuff come off of the bowl plate before. It's not a warm fuzzy feeling. So anyway, I will be using a push block on this one just because I am a little bit close to the blade. So yeah, I probably don't stress enough safety, and I hope that folks that are watching this take it for what it's worth and incorporate safety where it needs to be, for sure. These holes are going to line up perfectly. Now I can sandwich these back together again and finish out this hole, and it won't be oblong. It'll be right there in the center of the work. And got some wing nuts and put on the back side of these carriage bolts that made this basically one again. So I'm going to set this up in such a way that I will clamp this down on each cutting. Is if I can just pinch this down on this plate and pour these in here when that cools, I can flip that over and that should be flat on the back side. If any wax or anything like that gets built up in here and it can't get these out, then we could just take these wing nuts off and separate the two pieces of wood. So I'm going to get out of front. So not all wood shop shavings are created equal. Now before I get to jabbering here, what I'll do is I'll heat this up again. The wax is still melted, but it's starting to adhere on the sides of the melting pot. So we got we got the melting pot going again. It'll just take a few seconds to get that heated up to where these are shavings off of the wood lathe. You see how they're long and lacy? That makes real good tinder for starting a fire. These are shavings off of that Forstner bit that I was using to make the holes in that jig. And this is fir. This is birch. No, this is actually a cedar. These are planer shavings. These are off of the planer. Joiner shavings. I think here. That's, see how they're a little bit finer, but they're very similar to shavings off of the planer. These are also real good for tinder for starting fire. And this, of course, is a real fine, and this is a combination of oak and fir and cedar, and this is shavings, or this is sawdust off of the table saw. Use a little bit finer material, so I think what I'll do is I'll use a combination of this and a combination of table saw. I don't want. Okay, I mixed enough sawdust in there, and those fine shavings to make that more of a consistency of paste. So I don't think I need that. That's a wick in there. Matter of fact, a guy could put a wick in there and let these things burn easier, but I have another idea for that. At any rate, I begged a sacrificial spoon from Mama Rain there, and I'm going to go ahead and start spooning this into these little toilet paper tubes here. This isn't too many. Now we'll just let those cool and we'll come back and check them out in a little bit. That didn't turn out bad. That came apart nicely. And they're still warm enough to where the wax is just pliable. So I think a guy can clean this up real easy. Yeah, I think these are going to work out. I'll let those cool out a little bit more and I'll clean this up. So these are 4 inches long. If I cut these about 3/4 of an inch with kerf, I should have 5 of them. Just measure against the blade, 3/4 inches. I'll just run the block up next to where the line is and go ahead and start cutting these off. Okay, all these are roughly 3/4 of an inch, and with these being this small, we got little. With these being this small, we've got little pieces coming off here like that to make good wicks. So I'm going to go ahead and put one of these in the rocket stove, and see how they burn. I'll go ahead and set the timer and see how well they function. I'll go ahead and get one of these set up. Okay, here we got it started. I forgot to set my timer here, so I'm gonna go run and get that. I'm not sure how accurate this is gonna be because I got this thing burning about, I'd say probably a minute ago. But I'm gonna go ahead and set that anyways. I'm just gonna add a minute to my time. But it seems to be putting out a pretty good little flame. It's actually about 6.5 minutes into the burn, and it's going full blast here. It's actually starting to heat up the rocket stove, starting to heat up the griddle on the rocket stove here, and I'm really happy with it. As you can see, you don't need a whole bunch to start a fire. We generally don't use kindling, and we just start our wood off. We always dry wood a couple years out, and that's how we get our fires going, is with these little pucks, or not little pucks, but the fire starters from the egg cartons. Well, we're back. I went ahead and cut up those other pucks, and it's still hot and embery, and I've got realistically 18 minutes and 39 seconds. I think we probably got about, you know, if I wouldn't have disturbed that, we'd probably have maybe even 19 minutes or 20 minutes of heat out of that. Okay, that's 18 minutes plus the minute it took me to get the stopwatch going. Yeah, real happy with this. So that'll burn quite a few fires. Free sawdust. We already bought the toilet paper, and we got the candles for real cheap at garage sales. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you picked something up from this video, and appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us. If you like, consider subscribing and sharing, and hit the like button. Thanks.